Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, I am Elizabeth Chung. We're still letting people in. Okay. Okay. And let's see. Milo, she's connecting. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I am Elizabeth Chung. I oversee the graduate advising for Education USA. And in addition to that, I am also the executive director of IAC as a whole, which is a locally organized NGO that helps students who are interested in international education and study abroad outside their own country. And we help them make those decisions. And our biggest portfolio is US higher education. And so tonight I'm going to, first of all, the files and things that I share with you and that you see on screen, I will also at the end put them all in there, so into the chat, so you can download them. I won't be doing that as I show them to you because people who get in late apparently can't see those files. Okay, maybe it doesn't work that way exactly, but it appears to work that way. Okay, so we'll just be working off of Zoom, and a couple of things that I wanted to cover, kind of some housekeeping, but also future programs are that we are, oh, another one. Okay, it's just like having a little doorbell. Okay, get your phone. A couple of things are that one, we have recently redone our undergraduate advising to kind of modernize it. We've had our eye on doing this for quite some time, but this session, this fall session, we are now looking to do the same type of activity with our graduate programs. But one thing I decided to do a little differently, I've been advising students for over 20 years now. And one thing I have seen in the last 2 to 3 years is that graduate students or post-diploma students have grown much more sophisticated and aware of the process. I think a lot of that is through the Erasmus Mundus program, the UGrad program that the US Embassy sends people over, and the fact that so many things have opened up. So I wanted to kind of change the program, and I wanted to do it with feedback from you all, with a little back and forth that we kind of develop it together. So we have the best chance of the information meeting your needs. And so we'll be looking for feedback. And what we are doing this week for International Education Week is we are covering the 5 pillars each evening of the US education process, but there will also be some overlap in case you're also wanting to apply to Europe or Australia or some other places. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of this, and those are questions that as they come up, you can just type into the chat box if all is working well. Yes, I'm getting the nod that yes, you can type into the chat box. And so some of the first things that I wanted to go over today is to talk about the Education USA State Department's website that does the 5 pillars of research your options. But the other point of this is to also not just help you develop an overview, but the fact that we are your local NGO and your Education USA Service Center is to help you also find some things that are particular fits for you. Okay, for example, universities that have agreements to give in-state tuition to graduate students, which can help a lot with a master's. And so we're just going to basically run down the 5 steps. And I'll start with sharing my screen and showing you a little bit about the Education USA item. Let's see, screen 2. Okay. Now let's see. Okay, this is the Education USA guide, and there are 5 steps to study. And this is what tonight we'll be looking at. Research your options. There we go. Then can you all see everything? If you can't see something, let us know. Okay, because I'm not the slickest screen sharer in town. Okay, but you can see on this website that we have the research your options. Then we talk about financing, complete your application on Wednesday, student visa info on Thursday, and then prepare for your departure. Okay, on Friday. Now, the other thing that I would also like to make you aware of is that we have hot off the press. I just got some info that on Thursday at 3 p.m., the U.S. Embassy's consular section is going to have an F1 student visa presentation. Okay, and let me put in, oh, I'm not supposed to be putting in these links. I'll remember to put that in at the end of the Facebook page where you can watch it on Facebook Live. And we communicated with them a little bit about what they were doing. So I think that it will be quite interesting, okay, for you all to have some questions about what's the difference between the embassy, the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, SEVIS, and so on. And so this is kind of nice that it worked out to be on the step number 4 day. So we can meet after that Thursday, and then we can just kind of open the floor for questions that you have or questions that may have been raised. Okay, now I assume everyone can still see the Education USA site. This is specifically for students. You can see the State Department info on the virus, exchange programs. All of these things are pretty much on there. But what we're going to look at today are the research your options and the steps that you will begin to find a university as a post-diploma student. For example, why graduate school? Do you want a master's? Do you want a PhD? Often you can go directly from a bachelor's into a PhD. Also, it's much easier in most cases to get funding for PhD. So these are the things that we want to consider. And we also will give you the opportunity to join our Slack group where you can ask questions, you can communicate with been there, done that graduate students when they have time, and so on. But this is just to give you an overview and take you down the track of the things that you want to consider. And you can see right away that they want you to choose whether you want graduate, short-term. A lot of people like short-term programs. We have an extraordinary person in our Slack graduate group that I will be asking you all throughout the week to give me some little bios and maybe to decide if you'd like to be in there where you can ask your questions. But we have an extraordinary young man who did a short-term program and then went back in for a long-term PhD. And he is pretty much a wealth of information in there. And so then, of course, the English language or online learning, which apparently is a way of life at this point. Okay, so when you look at the graduate program, one thing that you need to notice is that most of this type of research is going to need to begin about 12 to 18 months before the academic year in which you want to attend. Okay, and so often one of the first things that you have to cope with is that when you graduate, although you can apply before you graduate, but that there may be some kind of gap between your graduation from your bachelor's program and going into graduate school, depending on your timing. Okay? So then when we look through this, and you can see some of these questions about things to ask yourself, these are things we go over in the forum. And then when we want to look at the actual materials and things on screen, I think I'll have to stop sharing that and then begin to share the other files. Let's see that we will go through. Okay, let's see. Okay, can everybody see this PDF situation that I've set up? I have two monitors, so I have to pick which one, and that's a little bit of a climb for me at my age. But if you can see this, you can see that the first page is just really about factors in school selection and researching your school. Okay. Maybe that's better. Okay. I told it to share, but then I forgot to, submit to that. Okay. So typically the things that people want to know right off the box is about financing. You know that that's the next one, but there's some overlap. Then you want to look at finding the fit. And how do we begin to research our options for graduate studies? And graduate studies are generally departmentally based. In other words, whether they're a lot more like the Serbian system where you go to faculty. And in fact, we almost use the term faculty interchangeably with department when we try to explain these things to you. This can change things, and you can often get a more competitive education than you could as a high school student where everybody's applying to one university as an undergraduate, and they don't want all engineers, they don't want all artists, but now you will be applying to a department. This is basically the point of specialization. And the funding that you will receive generally comes from the department. And so you want to look at departments that have funding. Okay, then you have the types of universities we have, such as land grants, and then to find an area where you would want to study. And this is where people have come along pretty substantially over the years, is that students are much more aware. In my opinion, or it has been my experience, that I've seen that more students are aware of professional journals and that they are actually reading peer-reviewed journals and getting very involved with them a little bit earlier than they were in the past. I don't know if that's true or not. Probably I should have set up a poll to ask how many of you are using these journals, but we can give you a list. You can talk to your professors, and you want to look in that area and see who's publishing, and see who's publishing in a field that is of great interest to you. Generally, when you've got a publisher in your field, particularly for a PhD, there will be money. And so this is one way to find your way into a school where your mentors will be interested in the same things that you are interested in. You also want to look at the region and the reach of the program, and you may be surprised because you can find that a lot of schools in the Midwest are large public institutions, what we call the land grant schools, which I will explain further as we go through the process of working on this together. But they will have funding and they will also have quite a reach because they have resources. Okay, and then when you look at this and you do your research, you're also looking generally for three types of schools. You're looking for the reaches, the schools that are really tough to get in, but you might have a chance. I would say people who get into these really competitive schools have one common factor. They apply. Okay, then we look at safety schools, and these are schools that would be thrilled to have you. One thing that you want to keep in mind with graduate studies in a safety school is that the big name cannot always be as important as you might think, particularly if you're going on a PhD to go into academia, because as one of my applied mathematicians said, who ended up applying late and went to George Washington when her colleagues, and they were all equally qualified, were at Ivy's. What she said to me I thought was interesting, because she said, you know, maybe to a lot of people it may not be the best, but I'm their best. I go to every conference, I'm publishing papers, and when she was through, she actually did a postdoc at Stanford, and I believe is working in academia heavily to this day, highly respected in her area of applied mathematics. And so you want to look at that, because if you can get into a school that may not be as competitive, for example, one of those young women left Princeton and she ended up going to Texas A&M, the very same generation, applied mathematician. And she said, because they weren't doing my research. I was just crunching the numbers for other research. I found a better match for my research at Texas A&M, and I moved there. And she said, and please take down that I was at Princeton. So you want to think a lot about this and a lot about the personality. And this is part of school selection, is to get a feel for that. Now, another thing that will guide you through this is I took this from Oklahoma State University, a state I'm from, but not the university that I would attend, but a land grant school. And the reason I say that is that Oklahoma State University and University of Oklahoma, nothing wrong with either school, but when it comes to us, it's like partisan fans and Speztra. Okay, so anyway, although we seem to have, some people seem to have married into OSU people, and so we're growing more tolerant and accepting. I noticed this a lot with the grandparents as the grandkids start to come on, that sometimes it's not so bad. But this is a guide, and the internet is loaded with these, but it talks to you a little bit about preparing for graduate school. And you can see their information. There has never been a time when it was so easy to reach out, to go to virtual advising events and things like this. And this is why we would like you to join us, so we can get you engaged in some of these. Okay, much of this is actually taken, as I recall, from the Donald Asher book, which is also something that we use for advising, and that I think you'll find that some naughty person has dropped the book in its hole into our Slack channel. And then here is another worksheet that we actually supply you with to look at from the various resources such as Peterson's Guide and these areas that we can help you and basically send you to. I don't know how many of you have heard about the GRE exam, but most schools, a lot of schools, many programs, some schools, you never can say all, but there seems to be a trend of dropping the GRE, the graduate record exam, or the GRE. Okay, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but I can almost promise you that everyone that is familiar with that on this call is probably thrilled to hear this. Okay, that when they first began to do this, because of the pandemic, although there is still testing, there are some schools that still want to see it, but instead of having a very easy summer, you know, with the quarantine and trying to adapt to everything that was going on, I thought it was going to be rather easy, is that suddenly a bunch of students descended upon me, and what they wanted was they wanted in master's programs, they wanted in them now, and they wanted to get in because they heard the GRE had been dropped because of the pandemic and that they could get into probably better schools than they previously might have. If there was ever a time to go competitive, that was the time. I had somebody who got in LSE, Cambridge, and Oxford. Okay, and she was no slouch, but those schools are hard to get in. But she was very competitive. So this is one thing that you want to look at, whether you're wanting to go to the US and study, or another country, or just try several countries and see what you can do. But the graduate situation is in flux at this time. Okay, do we have any questions? Yep, okay. So these worksheets will be, I think that we're probably safe for me to put them in chat so that you all can download them for yourselves. Okay. Just over here. Okay, now I'll show you a couple of other things that you can find in here. And this is, first of all, when they start talking about graduate degrees and more or less how the system works in the US. This is something that you can read for yourself. You can also look at it. And if you would like to be folded into the Slack channel where you can ask questions just basically anytime throughout the day, and usually you'll see an answer within 24 to 48 hours during the week, sometimes maybe nothing on the weekend, depending on what's going on. But you can look at this and get a feeling for how these things work in the US and some of the differences, such as going to licensure. When you read those things, you have questions, you can ask us directly in Slack. When you start to look at your priorities, you will see that a lot of this is, and that they have a worksheet that you can enroll, that you can use to act as a guide, different than ours probably, but as much material as you want. You can also see resources from students that are LGBTI students. You can also see resources for students with disabilities. Okay, this is just opens up to a lot of different research areas, graduate programs to choose from. If you do not see yours, that's another reason to go into Slack and say, hey, I want to study this. That I worked last year with a young woman who was studying a kind of material sciences that had not really existed before. It was a brand new cutting edge thing. And we had about 4 unis for her to look at. And of course, she ended up getting into one, well, she would have gotten into others, but the first one she got in, she just said sold and that's it. But it would certainly not be on this list, but you should be aware of this. This is also a good time to start looking at professors and seeing what professors that you share areas of interest with, and which professors or teaching assistants that you can relate to and make friends with. And typically what you want is you want someone who follows their professional area of study, someone who can direct you to the best journals to look at, where they can tell you where the exciting research is going on. If someone can get you into an online news or information service that basically is focused on your field, we can also help you try to find one if you can't get a lot of help on faculty or if you're wanting to change from what they can tell you. But if you can get into that and start reading, that can help you narrow and get more and more interested into an area that is specific, and see who's doing work there, who's publishing, and who's funding. That is really one of the keys to the start of a successful career in academia. Or maybe you want to just go in the private sector. Okay, here are some other areas where you can go and look for institutions by subject of interest, geography, other areas. These are pretty deep research areas at this time. You notice on here that they tell you if you cannot visit the United States. I would say now that that is not a problem at all, and that you should follow us and you should see who's offering virtual sessions. Often we can even hunt someone from a graduate department in an area and try to round up, a bunch of students to hear what that particular, person in the department has to say, and how to talk to prospective graduate students, because your fields are narrow. You have your areas, of specialization, and you have them even within your field. And depending on how far along you are in your bachelor's studies, the more you're going to be aware of that. Okay, and then as I said, you want to start to look at peer-reviewed journals, and you can see that they now have 1,000 lists of peer-reviewed journals that are open source. You also know that you can go to JSTOR and you can look in there, and I believe you can have 5 on your shelf that you can look at. I think they should give you everything, but anyway, that's what they had decided to do. But that is really the first step, and something I just kind of wanted to introduce you to the Education USA site tonight. And then another thing is I would like to go ahead and show you a little bit of our Slack channel, which I don't know if you can see that. Or okay, so it's on there. Okay, this is for our graduates, I believe. Okay, oh, I see. There we go. Okay, sorry, because we traded a document just before that, so I got out of the channel I thought I was in. But you can see this is our IAC Graduate Advising channel. And you can see we have the community standards. These are different channels. There's coronavirus. How boring. Okay. But I update it to let you all know what's going on. Then this is where you can see that we're even talking with graduate students that, for instance, that I talked about the CV template that we've been using, which came from some, you know, that we consider this template that I gave to people. And then pretty soon here comes Daniel, who is the guy who was there. He tells them all, do not put pictures on these things. You know, they could dismiss your application or whatever. And that is true in the US. They're very different than in Europe. And Danielle was the one doing the short-term program. Okay. So anyway, they don't like it, but also he comes in and tells them that LaTeX has a bunch of CV templates that you can use to make your CV concise and awesome. So this is a good place where we do a lot of things. I have 20 years of experience. I tend to know the big picture of how things are going to work, but we also work together in here to crowdsource. Okay, you can see where people talk about interviews. Okay, they've set up the introductions, questions about letters of recommendation, the official transcripts. Then we've got a random place where we just hang out. Okay, that somebody asked me about this prep in biomedical sciences, and I had to tell them that right now they're only doing this for domestic students, you know. And then we talk a little bit about statement of purpose and visa, but it's really a place where you can, it's kind of like a little water cooler where you all can gather or ask things. If something comes to you in the middle of the night that you want to know, you can punch your question in so you don't forget it when you wake up in the morning, and it's still sitting there for other people and you didn't wake anybody up. Okay, so this is just an overview. I hope it was somewhat helpful to get you started on this. And on the other hand, I hope to see you all tomorrow evening when we start talking about financial assistance and how that works, which I know is a big deal. Okay. And basically, my thinking is that we go through these things this week, and then we form the team, and then we just start to develop the programs, the questions, and we kind of go on this journey together. Are there any questions? Okay, does everybody see the documents in the chat? Okay, after this, I will send you all out a little kind of like what you filled out before, but I will be asking questions about like a 2-paragraph thing that where you can write what you think you want to major in, why you want to go to graduate school, and a little bit more information where we can get this more personal, where I know who's in here, what they're interested in. And then if you want to go to the Slack, you just let me know on that form. You return it, after you fill it out. And if you want on Slack, I will give you a place to put the email you want to use on Slack. And I will use that to invite you right into the channel. Okay, anything else that you all would like to cover or ask about the rest of the week, or any questions, anything specific? Oh, yes. Okay, one of the things that you need to realize is that we are not an agency. We are the official source of information on U.S. higher education for the U.S. State Department, basically for the U.S. government. And so when you talk about what is there, that we don't have just like a little booklet of, hi, here are the schools, we work with this school, we work with this one, you'll like that one. But instead, we look at all the schools and we tell you how to get into schools where they're going to be doing not just speech pathology, but researching in the areas of your field that you are passionate about. Okay, that we will look at the schools, at the funding. We will show you how to use these resources through example, through meetings. We'll probably start holding office hours in coming weeks and things like that, where you can come in and ask about programs also on Zoom, and we can do the searches right there, even though it's not like super interesting for everybody else, but the others can also learn from that, and how to close in on a really great program, how to start to communicate with the program to show your interest and these type of things. And so basically, instead of just having, a handful of schools that we work with, we actually are able to provide these services to you through the support of the United States Embassy here in Belgrade and State Department to answer these questions for you, and not to just send you to certain universities, say whose employ we're in or who we're commissioned by, but we really try to help you put together, say, about 10 or 12 schools that really have programs where you see yourself. We also talk to you about things like how to communicate with the schools. For example, one of the things that you want to know, because you probably don't care how bright and shiny it is, what you probably want to know is, what happens to your international graduate students? Where are they now? Where are they working? Do you have anyone from my part of the world that I can talk to and see how their education turned out for them? And so this is what we do, is we work very hard at not just the big picture, but at the granular things, because you're not going, people go to school for 2 reasons. The students go there to learn their knowledge so they can get the career, and the professors go there to teach you how to do that. Okay, and you're going there because it is another rite of passage through the career ladder for how you plan to spend the rest of your life professionally. And this is how we look at it, and this is how we work with you. Okay, not with the idea of, oh, here's a school for you to go to, you know, that is on our list or that is our partner and things like that, because we don't have partner schools. We have schools throughout the U.S., and that every school that is accredited is on our list. And we just try to help you find the best fit. One good example I would give you would be the good old University of Kentucky. You don't really have a lot of people. Any of you follow U.S. geography and stuff, you know that Kentucky, it's not Boston, it's not New York City, you know, or D.C. or L.A. But if you're an analytical chemist, they're one of the most highly published departments in the United States of America, or in the world, as a matter of fact. And so an analytical chemist would be very, very interested in that department. Okay, because that's where you'll be published, you'll be conferencing. It will be a great thing. And so we would like to invite you to join us and let us be beside you on this journey to higher education. And some of these students many go to the U.S. Currently, we're fourth in the destinations for graduate students in Austria. There is Austria, there is Bosnia, and I'm trying to remember what the third one is. Let me see if I have it on my screen, because I was looking at that. Let's see. Okay, yeah, Hungary. Okay, and so we can all pretty much see how this works. And we all know that everybody was liking Austria for a while and everybody was running there, but we stay pretty much fourth, you know, and we stay high up and always in the top 5 for as long as I have been using this. And so, but we also have students who decide to go to other places, but for presenting yourself to schools, for learning how to do this, that's what we're here for. We're here to show you the tools that you need to succeed. Okay, anything else you all want to know before we close? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I hope you all don't mind if I send you out one more questionnaire tomorrow to learn a little bit more about you all and what your interests are and so on, so that we can easily just fold you into a team where we're all working together for everyone to take that one step and enjoy the rewards of an international education and working and studying with people that are from all over the world that are interested in the same field that you are. Okay? Thank you and have a good evening.